Question 11 of the May 2018 AS Paper 1 Edexcel board. This is a binomial expansion question. You're going to get a binomial expansion question on most papers, okay, and that's part A. And then the thing that's going to be a little bit different sometimes is maybe a part B, or in this case a part B and C, really. This one's fairly straightforward, but we'll get to those parts in a minute. Let's get on with part A, a fairly simple expansion. Okay, so this is taught in slightly different ways, more about kind of how to write the maths out, really. But I think it's quite important to really understand the structure of binomial expansion and really be able to write it out without the use of a formula. So when you look at this expansion, it should be clear to you that the first term would be 2 to the power of 9. If you imagine 9 of those brackets written next to each other, you would do 2 times 2 times 2, etc., up to 9. So you'd get 2 to the power of 9, and it would have no other terms in it. Okay. Then the structure really is that the next thing that you want to do is you need your binomial coefficient, which in this case is going to be 9 choose 1. 9 choose 1 is always 9. Okay. So you need your binomial coefficient first, and then your next term, well, just focus on the 2's. The 2's are going to go down a power, so it's going to get 2 to the power of 8 this time. Okay, and then we need to bring in our first term that's got x in it, and in this case it is a negative x over 16. That's what you need to really copy down, and I would make good use of brackets here. Okay, so this is let's put this power of 8 on the outside, and I'm going to put a power of 1 here. I don't really need that here, but it helps you to follow the pattern because these powers are going to go, one of them's going to go down, one of them's going to go up. Okay, so the next term we do our next binomial coefficient, okay, which is going to be 9 choose 2. We go down a power with the 2's, and we go up a power with the term that's got x in it. Okay, and its best habit is to put the powers on the outside of the bracket. In fact, it's essential particularly when you're dealing with the x term. Okay, now obviously this would be quite tedious following this all the way along to a power of 9, and most of these questions, when they've got a high power, only want a few terms. So this says the first 3 terms, so we've done the first 3 terms. So we just need to tidy these up on the next line. So we can just put 2 to the power of 9 in a calculator. So we get 512, and then I would put a number of things in the calculator here, and let's be clear what you're going to do. 9 choose 1, which is you kind of don't really need to put that in the calculator, it is just 9. Okay, so we're going to do 9 times 2 to the power of 8, and then we're also going to times it by the coefficient of x inside this bracket here, okay, which is negative 1/16. Okay, so on your calculator you want to put in something like this, times negative 1 over 16. Okay, so put that in your calculator, and okay, so you should get negative 144 there. Okay, so and then the next term, well, the next term is going to be positive, isn't it, because the negative 1/16 is going to be squared. So let's be clear what we need to put in our calculator here. I'd probably work out 9 choose 2 first. So 9 choose 2 is 36. Okay, so we're going to put in 36 times 2 to the power of 7, and then times, well, it's going to be that negative 1/16 again, but that's going to be squared. Okay, so we'll put all of that in the calculator, and you should have got 18. Okay, so that's the coefficient of x squared. So this is our binomial expansion. It does carry on, but they only want us to find the first 3 terms. So moving on to part B, I've just written the answer to part A up here so that we can use it. So it says, given that the first 2 terms in ascending powers of x in the series expansion of f of x are 128 and 36x. Okay, so let's look at what we're trying to expand here. Okay, it's the answer to part A but multiplied by this bracket. So the first thing that we want to do is write that out, but with our answer to part A. If we were going to expand this would be the first bit of the expansion that we would do. Okay, and that is going to be a number. A is just a number. Okay, and 512 of course is a number. So this is the only bit that's going to give us purely a number. In other words, it's the only bit that isn't going to have x in it. Okay, so we know that those 2 things times together is equal to, well, the first term. Okay, and they're telling us that the first term is 128. So the first step here is pretty simple. We just solve this. Put 128 over 512 into your calculator, and you should get a equals a quarter. Okay, so fairly simple expansion there. Now, if we were going to carry on expanding this, then probably the next term that you would do would be a times this. So let's write that down. That's 144 ax. Okay, and then you would also, well, you would do probably this bit next, but this is going to give you an x squared term, and we're not looking at x squared terms in this question. It's focusing on the first two terms. Okay, so we can ignore that one. So the next one that you would do would be this one. Okay, so that would give us an x as well, so that's going to be 512bx, and then the next one that we would do would be this one, but that of course is going to give us an x squared. We can see that these are the only parts that we need to look at. If we look at any other expansions there, we're going to get higher powers of x. Okay, now they've told us that this is, or basically they've told us that the next term is 36x. Okay, so this is equal to 36x. Okay, now we already know what a is. It's a quarter, so we can substitute that in here. So we know that a is 1/4, so we can substitute this into here. So a quarter of 144 is 36, and then just copy the rest. Next I'm going to take this minus 36x over to the other side, so I'm going to add it. And then the next thing really to look at is that the coefficient of x on the left, which is 512b, must be equal to the coefficient of x on the right, which is 72. So we could just get rid of the x's here and just say 512b must be equal to 72. And then we solve that simple piece of algebra, 72 over 512, and we pop that into our calculator. And that simplifies to 9 over 64. Leave it as a fraction, don't write it as a horrible decimal. Okay, so we've got our value of a and b. A equals a quarter and b equals 9 over 64.